Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew from Elevated Planet, and today I am having a conversation with Fay Vale. Fay is a galactic artist, and you'll see her book here. I bought her book. It's wonderful. It's amazing. The images are fantastic, and I'll share a little bit more of that with you shortly. But first and foremost, hi there, Fay. How are you doing?
Hi there, John. Pleased to meet you and be on the interview. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you very much for being here, because, you know, I love what you do. First and foremost, I'm going to just start with just a few questions, just to start to frame things for the community, so they kind of get to understand who you are and how this has evolved over the years, if you like. So the first question is, when did you have your first encounter that kind of took you to this galactic side of things, the UFOs and extraterrestrial? What was the first time that anything ever happened in your life like that?
Well, not until my main UFO encounter, which was in my early 20s, did I ever think about anything like that. But going back after it happened, it brought up old memories. And
Right.
I remember when I was about 10 years old, when we went on holiday, Mum and Dad always booked a caravan.
Right.
Or a trailer park if you're in a trailer if you're in America.
Yes, yes.
So I remember them days. You would have the caravan on a park, but there'd be a washroom.
Yes, I remember those days.
So if you wanted to go to the toilet, you had to go out the caravan and to the washroom. Well, because it was such a big park, and lots of the caravans or trailers looked the same, when I wanted to go to the loo, I'd count the caravans on the way down so I could count it back and find the right one.
Right, yeah, because they did pretty much look alike, right?
That's it. And the only thing I can remember is this particular time, it was early evening, but it was still light. And I made my way to the washroom, counting the caravans. When I came out, it was pitch black and it was really dark.
Wow.
So I was wandering around for quite a while, couldn't find the caravan that we were in. And by that time, I was getting a bit panic stricken.
Yeah.
But when I got back, apparently I'd been gone for a long, long time.
Wow.
And I'd never remembered that before. So was that the start of it, and a missing time?
Yeah, missing time incidents are quite strange, aren't there? Or maybe there was a portal in one of those cubicles or something like that in the toilets. Took you to another world.
but you know, I'd never really thought about it before, but yeah. I can still put myself there now and feel how lost I felt when I came out.
You know, what makes me think about this as well, because I know that you have a good friend who I've also been in contact with recently, who's Alexandra, and Alexandra von Helberg, and she is like a hypnotherapist.
That's right.
Right. And I know that where missing time is concerned, a lot of that hypnotherapy sometimes uncovers what was going on during that lost time. Is that anything that you've ever kind of pursued at all?
Once when I first moved to Glastonbury, Mary Rodwell, who's a friend of mine, who I met accidentally when she was at a conference in Glastonbury.
Right.
She messaged me and said she got a student coming to Glastonbury and would I welcome her and show her around. And this girl had just finished a course with Mary doing regression. So the girl stayed with me a couple of nights, and she asked me if she could do a regression on me, and she did one then.
Right.
First time I've ever had it done, but on the regression, I did remember that I'd been on the spaceship. Right. I never knew that before.
Yes.
And it unveiled a lot lot of things.
Yeah. That's kind of what I recall from reading a lot of the books by Dolores Cannon, you know, who did a lot of this stuff, and she was regressing a lot of people. And, you know, there was a lot of mundane stuff within that, you know, thousands upon thousands of relatively mundane past lives and various other things. But occasionally something would come up where, particularly if there was lost time or something, and you would find that that person had gone onto a spaceship, and that this would come back to them in later years through this hypnotherapy. And I find this fascinating because whenever these things happen, there's obviously a defensive blocker that comes in that does not allow you to remember anything that's gone on.
Yeah.
Because it's probably going to just be too much, right, to actually take on, particularly in this 3D world that we live in, right? We have a very narrow view of life and existence when we look at it through a typical 3D lens. And it's only once you start to dig under the surface, you realize that everything is so much bigger and so much more magnificent than it is within our narrow range of senses of vision, of touch, of feel, of smell, and taste. We have very narrow senses. An entire universe exists outside of those range of senses in different dimensions. And I find it incredible. And I love it.
Yeah, it's a bit like a horse with blinkers on, isn't it? And it's tunnel vision. And when you start connecting and it opens up, it just is infinity itself, because it just goes on and on and on. And the more you learn, the more you seem to allow in.
Yeah. And you know what the curious thing is as well, from my personal perspective, is that when I've listened to books, read books, whatever, there are certain things that resonate immediately as absolute truth. And certain things I would question and say, well, it doesn't feel right. But certain things, it's not like I'm learning it for the first time. It's like I'm reading it, which is allowing me to remember what I already knew. And it's an odd sensation, but it kind of comes with almost with 100% certainty that what you've just experienced, read, heard is truth.
Yeah.
And therefore you can step forward. You've now remembered, you've taken another step forward. But when you went back when you had your hypnotherapy session then, and you realized you'd been on a craft.
Yeah.
Did you remember what the craft was like?
Yeah. In my last experience, when my art began, I was driving home with a friend. She was driving, and a white owl flew straight across the windscreen and settled on the tree at the side of where I was sitting. She was driving. And when I had the regression, the white owl morphed into a being. And he was the one who took me on the ship.
Right.
And I can remember, the most thing I remember about that ship was the floor, for some reason. And it was like, you know, when they put concrete floors down and it's all bumpy, it was like that. And it was a dark grey, but it had tiny little red lines running through it. And for some reason that stuck in my head.
Right.
But the ship, the left-hand side of it was like a massive, massive window. Right. And there was all planets and routes where ships went to, but it was all moving all the time. Wow. A bit like our sat-navs, but way, way more sophisticated.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was the whole side of that ship, and it was that sort of circle shape.
Right.
In front of me was two doorways. They never had any doors on. There were just two arches like that, but they obviously led to somewhere else. And then on the right-hand side, it was just like a mass of different gadgets and different stuff, touch things, you know?
Yeah.
And I did know there was beings on board with me, but I never saw them. You know, it was a bit like when you stand in, say you're in a shop and you're in a queue to purchase something, somebody stands really close behind you and you don't see them, but you know that they're,
Yeah.
and it was that feeling. So I never really saw the beings on that craft, but I can remember distinctly what it looked like.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because again, we know that everything is vibration, right? Everything is, that's what we are. We're energy vibrating at a certain speed. And we know that if it vibrates beyond our range, then you don't see it. And it's not that it's not there, it's just not visible to us because it's outside of our spectrum. And it kind of makes sense in some ways. If these were higher vibrational beings, they may not be visible to you, or could be that they've made themselves invisible because they don't want to shock or scare you as well.
That's correct, because a lot of my drawings will come with a human face. But that's because they said that our brain accepts the human form more than it would their form. So you're absolutely right that they scare you if you saw what they were really like. Although I've had drawings of what they're really like, and they're not a lot different.
Yeah.
But as a human, it's easier for them to connect if it's something that we can recognize, because our brain instantly accepts it.
Yes. Yes. And that again, it's kind of one of the, if you think about, like, you know, say for instance, I've got Nala, the German Shepherd dog here, right? If dogs didn't exist and all of a sudden Nala appeared from nowhere, then everybody would be terrified about this terrifying looking beast, because it's just not a shape or a form that you're familiar with. Now, she's gentle, she's beautiful, but you wouldn't know that, right? So and this is the problem, I suppose, from a mankind perspective. We fear what we don't understand and what we don't know intuitively, which is part of the problem, where, you know, fear is like this man-made emotion that we have to get over, right? And the more you can kind of identify the fact with the enormousness of the universe and the multiverse and everything else that's out there, and you can approach it through a different lens, and this is fantastic. We are part of this journey. And this is the other thing, that this is something that I keep talking about, because to me this is a really important point, which is we are immortal beings having a human experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can take a variety of forms. We just happen to be in this one this time around. And it could be that last time around we were extraterrestrials, or we were in a past life on this planet, working our way through karmic kind of circumstances to evolve to a higher level. But nevertheless, that's when you actually take that in as a fact, that we are immortal spirits having a human experience rather than the actual physical vessel, then you start to get it. That was a major point of enlightenment for me, was understanding that I am not this body. I am just occupying this body.
That's right.
I love the fact that I have this opportunity to have this life through this particular time on the planet, and I love it. But part of the joy comes from the fact that I know this isn't necessary. This is me for this existence, but the fact is I go on. This is not the end. So therefore, you don't need to fear anything. You know, if I was to die in this instant, I wouldn't. The physical body would go, but I would carry on. I would just go to the next.
Yeah, I totally believe that as well. Well, I don't believe it, I know it.
Yes, yeah, and that's the point, because people don't always get the fact that how can you know that? How can you know when you don't know until you die what's going to happen? So that's where I think a lot of people struggle. But I agree with you. I'm 100% sure of the afterlife. I'm 100% sure that I am just this electromagnetic energy that fires up this 50 trillion cells that makes John Drew, or part of it, because then there's a higher cell. There's all these other teams that are here to support us. I mean, how incredible is this? And at the same time, we've got alien life forces. We think of them as extraterrestrials. They think of us as extraterrestrials, because, you know, to them, that's what we are. They're just a different form of being, which is comes from the original same source, and we're all going through different versions of existence, I suppose.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we may be in an animal's body next time. We could be a plant. We could be a planet, we can be anything. It's exactly where consciousness takes you.
Exactly, and that's a very good point, actually, because you know we know that planets are living and breathing
That's right.
themselves. Gaia, Mother Earth, who's communicating with all the other planets and systems around during this time of evolution. Now, I know all this sounds fantastical, and this will go out under the Twiglet zone, but nevertheless, to me, I love this. You know, to me, this is kind of fact, and I would love to have had an experience. Say I've had an experience. I'd love to say I'd seen a UFO. I'd love to say I've been on a UFO. I'd love to say I'd seen an extraterrestrial. None of that. But it doesn't stop me from 100% believing that all this is true. Anyway, I digress. So
I think it's how much you allow to come in and how much, as I call, you've been barcoded.
right.
We're all barcoded. As soon as we're born, we're told what sex we are. This is your mother, this is your father. This is, you go to school, you grow up, you meet a partner, you have children, this, that, and the other. You go to work, earn your living, and it's all there. And it's all them little barcodes. This is you, but that's not really you. That's you in the corporate world. But in the amazing world out there, or worlds, or whatever it is, you are so much more. But because we're stumped with this thing, it's so difficult for a lot of people to move past that, because they're so in that. And that's what causes the fear.
Yes, it's this conditioning and programming that we get in life, right? That and it's designed to keep us small. It's designed to keep us believing that this is us, that we are the physical vessel. We can die. We may never come back again. It's, you know, and then everything is around fear. And there are those out there who like to maintain control of what's going on. So they promote the fear, they promote the division energy, which helps us to be controlled, because once you're under the influence of fear, then you reach out to those you think can protect you.
Yeah, correct.
But once you become fearless, then you become independent again.
Well, they're powerless when you're fearless.
Correct. So it's just a case of finding that, identifying with the fact that so much of this is just this false version of reality that's being created for us that is designed to keep us small. So, and once you get through that, it's a beautiful thing. Now, do you think that you have ET roots yourself in terms of past lives and things? Do you think, because I've heard that a lot, where people have these things, you know, things like you've experienced, tend to find that there are galactic roots there that have created this in the first place.